On March 15, 2022, in Austin, Texas, a significant incident began to unravel within the digital infrastructure of a prominent e-commerce company known as SupplySync. This firm specialized in orchestrating logistics and fulfillment for various industries, including consumer electronics, furniture, and automotive parts. Central to SupplySync's operations was its Application Programming Interface, or API, which was designed to facilitate seamless inventory management and real-time updates for its vast network of retailers and suppliers. The trouble commenced following a routine software update intended to enhance the API's performance. However, the update inadvertently introduced a misconfiguration in the inventory reporting mechanism. This misconfiguration allowed for widespread inaccuracies in inventory data, creating discrepancies between actual stock levels and what was reported to the retailers accessing the API. As a result, the system mistakenly flagged certain items as available when they were, in fact, out of stock. This failure constituted a critical access vector, as it exploited a dependency on automated processes and compounded existing vulnerabilities within the organization's response protocols. In the immediate aftermath, the impacts were rapid and measurable. By March 17th, 2 days after the update, multiple retailers reported significant issues stemming from erroneous inventory readings. SupplySync's internal metrics indicated that over 20% of orders generated via its API were affected, leading to an estimated shortfall of 15,000 units across various product categories. The company began receiving a slew of user complaints about delayed shipments and canceled orders, amounting to a loss of approximately $1.5 million in projected revenue in just the first week following the update. Internally, chaos ensued as various teams scrambled to diagnose the issue. Initial confusion led to multiple, uncoordinated responses. Incident response channels lit up with internal emails, each discussing possible causes ranging from API design flaws to external system interdependencies. On the third day post-incident, the engineering team attempted a partial fix by rolling back the most recent update, hoping to restore accurate inventory reporting. However, their efforts were hampered by a lack of comprehensive logs that could have pinpointed the root cause of the failure. Without granular visibility into system operations, assumptions about the nature of the malfunction began to proliferate, leading some teams to mistakenly conclude that the issue might be isolated to a small subset of retailers. External signals of trouble became evident alongside the internal turmoil. Monitoring alerts from the system indicated irregular patterns in order processing, mirroring the issues raised by users. Minor media mentions surfaced, highlighting SupplySync's difficulties in maintaining reliable service levels. Rival companies capitalized on the situation, with some even beginning to issue promotional campaigns aimed at dissatisfied SupplySync customers, further complicating the company's position in a competitive market. As the days progressed, the cascading effects of the API failure began to expand beyond SupplySync's immediate operations. Distributors reliant on timely inventory updates experienced shortages, triggering disruption across their supply chains. Reports emerged of delayed shipments from manufacturers to retailers, impacting inventory of consumer electronics just ahead of the crucial spring shopping season. With each passing day, the miscalibrated API continued to cause dislocations in supply, suggesting that the failure was not just technical, but indicative of deeper organizational vulnerabilities. On March the 22nd, a week after the initial failure, key stakeholders convened for an emergency meeting. The discussion centered on the scope of the disruption and possible remediation strategies. Some team members pointed to a lack of rigorous testing protocols prior to software updates as a contributing factor. Others raised concerns about the dependency on automation without sufficient manual oversight. However, the conversation was complicated by ownership issues. The network of vendors and suppliers integrated with the API created a complex matrix of accountability that made pinpointing responsibility difficult. As confusion continued within the organization, a sense of urgency began to pervade the atmosphere. Financial analysts projected that if the inventory inaccuracies persisted, SupplySync could face a cumulative loss exceeding $10 million within a month, not accounting for potential long-term impacts on customer loyalty and market share. The gravity of the situation became apparent as key accounts voiced concerns about the reliability of SupplySync's systems, a sentiment amplified by social media commentary from frustrated users. By the end of March, initial attempts to rectify the failure had yielded mixed results. While some minor adjustments allowed for incremental improvements in inventory reporting, customers remained skeptical. The failure had prompted calls for a thorough investigation into SupplySync's API architecture and governance practices, setting the stage for external scrutiny in the days to come. The organization faced pressure from not only its clients, but also regulatory bodies, eager to understand how such a foundational error could have occurred within a leading service provider in a sector heavily reliant on digital accuracy. With these mounting pressures, SupplySync initiated an internal audit of its API development process and systems management protocols. Teams were tasked with documenting the incident, identifying missteps, and proposing mechanisms to prevent a recurrence. Meanwhile, troubling signals from the marketplace suggested that the unresolved crisis was poised to escalate further, with secondary effects bubbling up in the supply chain that threatened far more than just the company's bottom line. As the organization grappled with the fallout from the API misconfiguration, questions loomed about the broader implications for a system increasingly built upon interconnectivity and trusted automation. The stage was set for deeper investigations into the vulnerabilities that lay hidden within the layers of digital infrastructure, and the organization found itself standing at a critical turning point as unresolved complexities remained in the wake of an overlooked software update, waiting to trigger the next phase of disruption. As April unfolded, escalating concerns surrounding the reliability of SupplySync's services led several major clients to contemplate shifting their logistics operations to competing platforms. By April 5th, industry reports surfaced predicting significant layoffs at SupplySync if the inadequacies continued, indicating a potential workforce reduction of up to 30%. Amid rising tensions, external pressures mounted. Legal teams from various major clients began to prepare notifications of intent to pursue damages, citing breaches of contract due to the ongoing disruptions in service. By April 10th, clients representing about 40% of SupplySync's revenue filed formal letters requesting compensation for losses incurred due to business interruptions. The organizational response continued to evolve. On April 15th, SupplySync publicly acknowledged the systemic failures through a press release, pledging to investigate fully the underlying causes. The release stated that the company had engaged third-party security experts to assess the API's failings and coordinate remediation efforts, but failed to reassure clients who were already alienated. As trust eroded further, media outlets began scrutinizing previously undisclosed internal chat logs, highlighting discussions among team members who had flagged concerns leading up to the incident, only to have them overridden by successive management decisions prioritizing rapid deployment over cautious evaluation. By April 20th, the ramifications began to manifest vividly across SupplySync's client base. Reports emerged illustrating the spike in operational difficulty among affected retailers, some of whom began to file regulatory complaints regarding faulty inventory practices and consumer protection violations. In parallel, competitors of SupplySync launched targeted marketing efforts, positioning themselves as safer alternatives and gaining market share in the wake of SupplySync's faltering reputation. The effects of the failures soon reached broader economic circles, with analysts reporting that disruptions at SupplySync triggered increased delays and price surges across various sectors, notably consumer electronics and automotive parts. In total, it was estimated that over 100,000 businesses faced indirect consequences due to these breakdowns. In response to the intensifying crisis, on April 29th, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, announced an investigation into SupplySync's operational practices and whether it had violated consumer rights. This was followed shortly by inquiries by state attorneys general interested in the financial implications for citizens and businesses harmed by the supply chain breakdown. The looming prospect of government scrutiny further complicated SupplySync's already precarious situation. By mid-May, the continuance of operational deficiencies and financial losses prompted the company to consider an aggressive restructuring strategy. On May 16th, senior management rolled out a significant workforce reduction plan, anticipating a 50% employee cut by August. They aimed to streamline operations and focus only on high-priority sectors. However, this move was met with backlash from remaining employees concerned about overburdened teams managing an already compromised operational framework. Under the weight of such disruptions, client exodus and regulatory pressure had begun to take their toll. The financial markets reflected SupplySync's troubles with a steep decline in stock prices, plummeting by over 70% from its earlier valuation. As urgent communications continued to circulate internally, whispers of potential bankruptcy filings grew louder among stakeholders. The anticipated came to fruition when, on June 1st, SupplySync filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection amidst mounting claims and liability that far exceeded initial estimates. The formal filing revealed liabilities exceeding $200 million, spanning a multitude of complex contracts, client claims for damages, and unpaid invoices from defaulting vendors. In the unfolding weeks, as investigations continued, key executives at SupplySync were scrutinized for negligence. By mid-July, law enforcement agencies began to serve subpoenas related to potential fraud issues linked to misleading statements made to investors about system reliabilities prior to the incident. As an institutional collapse culminated, the platform ultimately ceased operations permanently on August 15th. Legal actions following the bankruptcy stoked interest in holding upper management accountable, culminating in a series of resignations amid the fallout. Final updates from the investigation into SupplySync concluded that a confluence of oversight failures, lack of testing rigor prior to updates, and systemic miscommunications between vendors were primary contributors to the crisis. By the end of August, the institutional ruin resulting from an overlooked software failure demonstrated the fragility embedded within a heavily interconnected digital infrastructure that could lead to a wide-reaching economic collapse. As of September 1st, 2023, SupplySync's assets were being divested through court-directed sales, while ongoing investigations sought to draw clarity on accountability for the operational breakdown.